You're listening to Mark of the Maker.
Welcome everyone to Mark of the Maker. This time we're going a little bit different with some Markless of the Maker. It's just Sean and I. Say hi, Sean.
Hello.
This is one of the tiniest of the episodes, the Microsode, Minisode version. And we're going to talk about something that's pretty important that we probably don't talk about a lot or probably talk about enough, and that's kind of mental health in knife making. I've talked to a lot of knife makers about this sort of thing, or probably more than I really thought I would, about anxiety and stress and how unhealthy it can be. And it's just as important or more important than some of the other troubles we run across when we're making knives. And you and I have talked about this ad nauseum about, working in the shop and what it can be like. And I think one of the big problems is this starts off as a hobby, something to relax and do. And then what happens when that hobby becomes your job and you don't have a hobby?
There's the question, man. What do you do?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I mean, what do you do to relax when the knife making is stressing you out? And I want to add a caveat here. We're absolutely blessed to be able to do what we do for a living, but make no qualms about it. Don't take this as bitching or whatever about our work, because it's fantastic to be able to do this. But at the same time, it is our work, and we put a lot into it. I'd say almost everything, at some points.
Oh, definitely everything.
And I think that's probably what makes it so hard to do sometimes, and both extremely rewarding and extremely frustrating sometimes. There's not a whole lot of even keel for me where I'm just like, oh, I'm rolling the work and, it's just a work day and do this. It's either high. There's a lot of highs and lows, and then they go to the extremes for me. Is it kind of the same for you, or?
Oh, yeah, man. The highs are high and the lows are lows. When I finish a build, I feel like the coolest motherfucker on the face of the earth. And when I botch up a project, I feel lower than snake shit. So,
do you botch up quite a bit? I mean, I know we've talked about botching up quite a bit. For you, it's, I think, the grind sometimes, or do you have other places where you can mess stuff up too?
Man, anymore, it's just on master bevel grinds. That is my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Of course, I still have fuck ups here and there, but they're anomalous pretty much at this point.
What do you do when that happens?
Oh, I react poorly. I tend to break stuff and act like an asshole and sulk. And yeah, that's how I deal with that currently. I mean, anymore, I try to keep it to myself. I try to keep it contained to the shop and not bring it in the house. I used to be real bad about just carrying it with me. So, I mean, at least I'm aware that it's a thing, and I'm trying not to influence everybody else in my household with it.
I get bad about that sometimes, because I'll go through a spat of ruining, and by ruining, that is a whole different meaning to a lot of different people. Ruining to me can be chasing a bevel back past where I didn't want it to, or basically not matching on both sides, the plunges.
Yeah, having just some non-symmetrical point on the grind. And I believe that is a pox on all of us. I don't think that is eccentric to you or I.
Oh, no. And it's, you see sometimes where people like to post about, oh, this is what I won't allow out of my shop, and sometimes it's a look at what I won't allow. And sometimes it's just saying, hey, I messed this up. This is why next time you see it, it'll have a different handle or a different blade, or, that's another tough part about this is our customers. A lot of our customers are also friends. They're the people we interact with the most every day. So we'll post on there and be like, hey man, screwed up some blades. It's a shitty day. I ain't complaining about work, but I kind of am, so it's kind of tough sometimes to balance that out.
venting thing as far as that goes, from how I view it.
Yeah. And I try not to sometimes. Sometimes I'll just send you a message or, McGinnis or Mark or something like that and just be like, yeah, I dick some blades up. It sucks.
Misery shared's misery bared, man.
But and I do appreciate, people are like, oh, I'll take that off your hands. But then people also have to understand that there's a reason we don't let stuff out of our shop. We have our name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most important thing we have in this business is our damn name. It's literally the reason this is called Mark of the Maker. It's marked on our blades, and it's the most important part of, our trade is our name. But it's also what gets us in so much trouble.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what has helped me a lot is also, and I think it helps a lot of mental health issues, is finding out when other people have the same issues. It's, like you've said, misery shared.
Yeah.
Is not so much misery cared, or I don't know what you say. But it helps, and it helps me knowing that there are people that struggle like I do with having slow points or having problems where I have problems getting out to the shop.
Oh,
where I loathe. Yeah, where you loathe to go out to the shop. And it's not because you don't love making knives. Your hatred for having to possibly screw something up has gotten so big that it overwhelms your love for making. And that is, in twofold, it gets you down in almost a kind of a depressive state, because one, you're upset that you're not out in the shop, and two, you're upset that you're upset with knife making. Does that happen to you, or is it?
Oh yeah, man, all the time. Anxiety is my greatest fucking work stoppage. I mean, if I've got like one process left on a blade and it's the one I don't want to do, I can put that off who knows how long, and it's just to avoid anxiety.
Oh yeah, there's one now I have for I've got to put a clip on it and it'll pretty much be done, but I'm just kind of like leaving it to the backside. It's going to be for blade show, so it's not too crazy, but it's like, why not just finish that? But it's like that is the possibility of ruining it, and that's something I got to get over. And I've been 15 some odd plus years of this, and I still have issues with getting myself to finish parts that I don't like when I should be doing those probably first.
Yeah.
And I've talked to Steiner about this, and he has that saying, what is it? The paralysis by analysis. I get that quite a bit, where you have so much on your table, and it does build up a lot. Well, you'll end up starting a couple pieces, when you should just finish that one, but you're like, well, if I'm going to drill these holes, I can drill 2 or 3 sets of holes,
Yeah, I'm already set up. I'll just do these. Yeah,
but then one of the most profound things someone said was like the sneakiest form of procrastination is starting a new project. And I think that gets me there, is where I'll stack a few up, and be like, well, because I know this process is an easy process for me. I know I'm just drilling holes. That's not a big deal. That's going to go. I know I can stand there and drill the holes all day, and they're going to drill like they should, or tap or whatever. Yeah, you'll get a broken tap on occasion, but it's not an artistic feat, I guess, that make or break a knife.
Oh, dude, so it's simple shop work. It's apprentice work, basically.
Manual labor, that just kind of, you just do and stand there and do all day. But I found that like you have to break it up in pieces. When you get that sort of overwhelming thing, you've got to stop worrying about, somebody sending you a message over and over about this or that, and just be like, okay, I'm get back with them, or get with the people that are on you or whatever, and say, hey, I'm on this knife. I do what I can, but you cannot let so much of it overwhelm you. You have to just take little bits of it, and those little bits start adding up into bigger bites. And I found that kind of helps.
I mean, every process you run adds up.
Yeah. Well, I have an issue with, I also have horrible memory. You guys listening probably understand that, as I sit there and try to figure out the name of somebody that I should know or whatnot. But so my issue with that is I have to have stuff sitting out in front of me or I forget about it. So I also end up with a big table full of knives that I'm looking at like, shit, look at how much work I got to get done. When sometimes I got to put them to the side, clear it out, put new paper down and just say, hey, there's 2 knives right here. Let's concentrate on these 2, get them out the door and get done. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and, start new shit while you're not trying to get the other stuff done.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like right now we're probably not helping anybody, but we're just basically venting about stuff that happens to us.
We'll help one person feel less alienated and alone. Then our job's done.
It does happen, and and the pressure is tough. It's hard to, when your income relies on doing this, and then you're sitting there going, I can't be an artist today because make no means about it. That is kind of what we do when you're creating something from nothing, a design, from nothing, you are creating art in your own way.
Yeah.
And I think really to do what we do and to care about it or whatnot, to really be passionate about it, also brings a little bit of baggage, and that is in the form of anxiety. It is in the form of peer review. I worry about what you guys will think. I worry about what the customers will think. And I will always worry about that. And that's kind of unhealthy, but it's also part of what comes with what we do.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but if you didn't give a shit like that, then you wouldn't be who you are and your work wouldn't be what it is. So, and that which nourishes also consumes. That's just the nature of it.
I think that covers it pretty well. That right there, because it really does. Sometimes I wish I could just drop it and not worry. I wish I could not, because this is something we've all done, is chase a knife to death. And when we know we're going to do it, we look at a knife, we know we're going to grind it or do something to try to fix it, to not let it go until we kill it.
Yep.
I've gotten better at saying, okay, that San Maya is not going to work out for me. There's no reason for me to grind it, or to jack with it, because I know that I'm going to be unhappy with how it looks. So don't even worry about it. I've gotten better about doing that. And I think we have to recognize our fallacies, our issues, and try to stop them before they drive us into the dirt, because they can real fast. And I still find myself doing it on occasion where there's a little something I'm like, I got to fix that until I've ground it too far, like on handles too. Even like something stupid like micarta, and the pattern doesn't look quite like I'd like. Well, grind it a little thinner, get a pattern you like out of it. Boom, too far.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're all guilty of it. And sometimes we just get so micro-focused, we end up killing the damn thing.
Yeah, oh yeah. And we have to learn to leave those things and to leave them behind.
Yeah.
But man, it's easier said than done. But hopefully maybe some of you guys out there will listen and be like, yeah, just leave it. Sometimes it's going to be a lot faster to just start a whole new knife than to chase that one. That one that you, deep down, you know which ones they are.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'd just be a lot less frustrating. Now, I have gotten better about that, just cutting my losses early, and usually it involves starting a new blade.
Oh, yeah. It tends to be where it happens to me, too. I can also get it with like bolsters and handles. I have a flat type of issue where it's never flat enough. Then when I start contouring the bolsters and stuff, they want to cup out when I get them too thin. So it's a constant chase and a battle. And sometimes I'll chase those to death, but I try to cut those off in the past too.
I think being able to cut your losses early and saying, okay, we're going to stop this. We're going to, fall back and punt. There's a little bit of artistic maturity there.
Yeah.
And I'm striving for that.
I am too. I'm trying to be better at knowing where my faults are. And I know my faults, but it's just like anxiety and stuff like that. You can rationally know things, but it doesn't stop it from happening.
Yeah, it don't change a damn thing. Yeah.
No, have you ever had like issues before knife making with anxiety or, any of those, mental health issues that kind of plague us sometimes?
Yeah, man, hell, I've always had issues of some sorts, but as far as the anxiety goes, nah, it's a fairly recent thing.
Yeah.
Well, recent being within the past 7-8 years.
Yeah, I had...
That's recent in the grand scheme of things.
It really is. I mean, hell, that's a new maker to us now.
Yeah. Ain't hit the 10-year mark.
Yeah. And some people, friends and whatnot, know this about me, but I don't tend to make it public. And part of this probably because of this bad stigma we still have with mental health and as a whole, as a community whole, not just knife making, just everybody. We like to kind of push it to the side and pretend like it's not there. But it was like 14 years ago. I was sitting it was before I went full time, whatever, but I was sitting behind a desk at a kind of a corporate job, and just my chest got heavy and felt like I was like, shit, I'm having a heart attack or something. And I had a full blown panic attack. And then the vicious cycle of that is, once you get scared of having a panic attack, by God, here comes another panic attack.
Yeah, panic attack induced panic attack.
Yeah, talk about a vicious cycle. And I think that's I think that's a lot more prevalent than we really talk about, because I've had some makers I've talked to that have had the same issues, and we just don't say anything about it because it's not manly, or it's not,
it exposes the chink in your arm, or.
Yeah, I guess so. So we don't talk about it, even though it's, and we still have a lot of folks that'd be like, well, it's just, just get over it. And it doesn't work that way.
Oh, geez, if it was that fucking simple, right?
Yeah, it's a rewiring of our brains. And we're not, as humans and evolved as we are, we still have some residual type of lizard brain stuff going on where we used to have to worry about shit all the time, that, oh shit, there's a bear behind me. You were worried about this. So, like your amygdala and stuff was shooting off this thing saying, your fight or flight, going, you better keep your eyes open, buddy. And for some reason that's kind of stuck with us. And what I've read is, like, I guess your amygdala can grow with the more times that happens to you, the more times you actually do get in a fight or flight sort of situation, because it's a learning program. So, if there's a lion or a bear behind you, by God, you're faster at reacting when the bear is behind you. So it's learning that you need to be better at protecting yourself. Unfortunately,
it's like exercising a muscle.
Exactly. But the problem is we've exercised that muscle to have that flight situation or that anxiety push when there's nothing to worry about. But we still have that muscle that still wants to flex and be like, hey man, I'm still here. I'm still here to protect you, even though we're in a, much safer environment than, early man was. And I think that's some of the issue with a lot of the PTSD and whatnot. And I'm not, I'm talking out of my ass here, but, I think a lot of those guys just kind of had that thing set off so many times that it has nowhere to go. It's a muscle that is well used, but now has nothing to use it on. So it uses on anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's, part of the anxiety issue with a lot of people, and then that carries over into, what you're making and what you're doing in your everyday life. And, bottling that or living with it and working with it is tough. But I think for me, a big part of it is just there's a big comfort in knowing that there's other people out there that have the same issue. And we may find from putting this out there that there might be a lot more people that have this issue. Or not, but if it is an issue, you're not alone out there. There's plenty of it going on.
Oh yeah.
And I guess one thing that I think really kind of hurts and helps is the social media aspect of it. It's fantastic for getting your name out there, but it's also absolutely hard on mental health if you let it be.
Mm-hmm.
What parts kind of hit you hard?
Man, just the constancy of it is what gets me. It's like there's never downtime.
Yeah.
It's like something I feel like I've got to constantly be on. I've constantly got to be on top of.
Well, yeah. And I feel like something healthy for people to do is take these, social media breaks. I know Burnley does it on occasion. And I applaud him for that. I haven't been able to do it yet, and I know I need to. But I mean, then I also feel like in this kind of race we're running, as still trying to be relevant in a day where there's this huge boom in knife makers, that you kind of have to stay on it, and I do like to know what's out there, but it's crazy. I've looked out there and I've seen makers I've never heard of or never even came close to hearing of, tons of them with just huge, like on Instagram, huge followings and stuff like that. And you're like, where did this come from? And as makers, once again, go into that artist thing, you're very much, that the artist side can be the pettiest side of you. It can be I guess the worst side of us sometimes.
It can best and worst. It's art, so we're talking in extremes again.
Yeah, it's the same thing that can help you create something is also the same thing that can be absolutely envious for no reason, and it's unhealthy and I hate those emotions. I hate when something like that pops up in me, and I'm like, why? Don't be jealous of something that you can't control. That is a useless emotion, and I think it's hard because going back to early man, it was like you had a tribe, you competed with, a couple people, but now we feel like we're competing with the world because the world's at our fingertips. Everyone's successes are out there. We don't see a lot of failures. We see successes. And it's hard not to judge yourself against someone else.
Yeah, well, especially if you're a competitively wired person.
And that's part of it. Once again, it goes back to the art side. You want to be the best at what you're doing. You want to create the best thing you possibly can. And then when you see what in your mind is something that you think is better, or you think is being, I guess it doesn't even, because it's such a subjective thing to say what is better when it comes to the art of knives. But when you see a better reaction, out of someone that you don't know or something that, you're like, oh shit, what am I doing wrong? And the thing is, you're not doing anything wrong. You're making what you make, and you don't know how someone else got to that place. Look at followers and things like that. We're very much, so on track with followers. And I try not to pay attention to that shit because it really doesn't matter. Your followers do not always equal buyers. And it doesn't always equal what we need to sustain ourselves. You know what I mean? And sometimes you're like,
I know exactly what you mean.
How the fuck does someone get 90,000 or whatever the hell it'll be? You're like, what is going on there? And we have to remember sometimes you can buy followers. And I'm not saying people out there, that we know are doing stuff, but I mean, you have to remember things can be bought. Things can be manipulated. And also some people are very good at playing the game, and I'm not. I'm not good at the game. I know I should be.
Yeah, man, there's just a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. You can't believe everything you see in social media. That's a fact. That's been a fact from day one, and sometimes we forget that. It's to our detriment.
It is, but it's it's also very hard not to judge yourself. But it's been said in a lot of different platitudes and ways of saying it. Of you can't bowl a 300 in another man's lane and shit like that. And as hokey as that sounds, it's true.
Yeah.
How someone else's success does not change yours at all. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that someone else getting a kudos does not mean your knives suck. All you can do is make your own knives and hope they sell. And we're all very lucky that a lot of these knives are selling. It's a very buyer's market type of place, and yet there's tons of people selling tons of knives right now, and we're all very lucky to be able to do that. So we need to worry less about numbers and, somebody getting a, pat on the back that you didn't get. Don't worry about that. Just make your stuff and be happy with it. And if you actually aren't selling, then I could see where that can be very stressful, but look at what you're doing and try to change your approach.
Yeah.
And I was saying earlier about playing the game. I'm not very good at it. I have a hard time. I know the things that sell are like, they want to see the maker, they want to interact and stuff like that, but I have a hard time doing the selfie and the look at me sort of stuff. But that is part of what people want, because this is a very visual type of buyer now, not just for the knives, but for the maker. But, I look at things on myself, I'm like, man, who the hell wants to see that shit? So I just, post photos of the knives and kind of carry on. And the hashtag stuff. I'm not great at the hashtags. I probably ought to be better at that as far as the Instagram stuff like that.
Yeah, I ain't worried about it. I put up my pictures. If folks see them, they see them. If not, fuck it.
Well, I think, that's, speaking of like some of the other social media, it's like, I think that's also where we get in trouble. And Mark touched on this before about it being an echo chamber. It's very easy to get in your own group. And if you ask, hey, is this cool in Kendrick Knives group? You know what they're going to say? Hell yeah, it's cool. It's like, yeah, we have the extremes on both sides. It's like one side is where it's Wild West Instagram, and the other side where we're in groups where everybody kind of says that's great. So it's hard to keep a balance. So I don't know. It's hard to kind of keep your head on straight. It's hard to either not get an ego about it and to also, not be too stressed out and be depressed or anxious about it. Because truthfully, there's one thing, there's no reason to have an ego in knife making. You see it, but you're like, we're just making knives. It's not rocket science. But I guess, do you have any suggestions on how people should worry less or be less anxious about social media? What tips do you do to not be so stressed out by it?
And I just do my best not to take it too seriously. I take every bit of it with a grain of salt. I
think that's solid advice, because
it's as good as I got. It's as good as I've come up with at this point.
Well, I think you have to, one, don't spend so much time looking for things to be upset about. I find myself doing that where I'm like, if I hit that explore button enough, I'll find something that upsets me, in a way that I'm like, why did I do that? There's a lot more tracing going on, or, kind of borrowing of ideas, I guess.
Yeah. And IP infringement. Be it on purpose or accidental.
And you'll get tons of people that'll be like, well, you don't have a patent on it, blah, 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 which is so infuriating. It's like, okay, you spend money, put a patent on it, someone changes it, what is it, the 4% or 5%, whatever that is, and you can absolutely make it again. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about, hey, someone else is making this, let me veer away from it. I don't do a lot of chisel ground stuff. I have people that I know do that. I stay away from it. And sometimes I get stuck wishing people would act like I want them to act. And that's an absolute horrible way, because you're going to be disappointed every single time.
Great.
And I found that I have to stop that. I can't expect people to act like I think they should. It doesn't work that way. People are going to borrow designs, big air quotes. I know that plays well on a podcast.
Yeah.
But they're going to. Where it gets real frustrating is some of those guys will then become popular, and then you worry about it becoming someone coming back to you and be like, hey, did you borrow that? Did you steal that from them? You're like, no, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And you just wish folks would look at the history a little bit, or look and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got red-assed on occasion, probably 2 or 3 times over shit like that.
Yeah.
That does chafe me some when somebody, is that such and such blade shape? And I'm like, well, such and such wasn't doing it 10 years ago when I was doing it. So I'd say fucking no.
But at the same time, it's also kind of nice when someone comes at you and you're like, nope, here's one I made back in the day, so suck it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the vindication is sweet.
Sometimes, yeah, and that's truthfully an unhealthy part of mental health of this too. That's not really good, but by God, it does feel good sometimes.
Damn straight.
And one of the issues that I know makes a lot of us stressed out is the shows, the knife shows. And I think you've got the best way of doing it, of just cutting back a lot of shows.
And changing the way I handle them. Like, I enjoy knife shows. I like going to knife shows. Knife shows are my element. Selling at knife shows and setting up to sell at knife shows, not so much my bag.
Yeah, it gets very extremely stressful, and I've one thing I found, because when I first started doing the blade show, and man, I was staying up all night every night, and of course the longer you make, you try to whittle down the issues that you have. Like, I was like, man, these aren't sharpening like I want to, and just was getting pissed off at that shit, and it was so stressed out, and I was so stressed out, and Abby actually drove me all the way to the blade because I was, too tired to do anything, and that's not healthy. And I still get an unhealthy amount of stress leading up to a show. But then I find that if I'm that stressed out, it's really not worth it. If it's going to happen to you every year, you cannot do that anymore. And it may be that show, it may be how you're approaching the show, because we have these ideas of what we think the customers need from us. And I had one of the TKI shows a couple years ago where I had it in my head that I had to have all liner locks because I thought that's what the customers needed from me. And the more I stressed about it, the more I messed up knives. And come to find out, and I was upset while I was there, not to the customers, but just it's not fun to be upset while you're away from your family doing a show when you should at least be having fun with your friends, which is what you usually end up doing. But I was upset because I had no sleep, too much stress. And I realized later on that I could have just done frame locks and made more people happy than than me doing just a bunch of liner locks and deciding, oh, that's what they have to have. That's what I've decided in my head that they think they need or want.
Otherwise, they won't.
Yeah. But just because somebody, and that's something we have to remember, just because customers may like this fancier knife more than another knife doesn't mean they won't be happy with a more basic knife.
Or that there's the customer who really wants that more basic knife more than they could ever want the higher grade one, or fancier, however you want to define it.
And we have to remember that for shows is how many people can we make happy? And that's really the most important part. Is it more important to have one guy have the fanciest knife and be super happy, or, let's be honest, maybe make more money because he flipped it? Or are you going to be more happy having knives in more hands? That's something you have to think about and take into consideration.
Now, that is something I take into consideration anymore. If you notice the last few times I've displayed at a show, everything's pretty simple. No bolsters, no real fancy stuff. Just taking good quality materials and making them look as good as I can and doing, nice user grade everything. Maybe with a, hint of adornment here and there, but nothing crazy.
Yeah. Well, and you had customers that went away happy as can be.
Yeah.
No complaints. I never, go back on, this, I've never had a customer be like, oh, this is too plain. I've had people be ecstatic, like you said, about it being a user grade stuff. But in my head, I got it to where, it had to be fancy because we've moved into this, like, everything has to have a wad of Mokatai or Damascus or whatever on it, and to make people happy. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. The designs should speak for themselves. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with having, and I also get in my head that, I've got to have 5 different designs, but I've seen people, knife makers with one design, variations of it, and people are perfectly happy. We need to get out of our own heads with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we need to realize that there are guys who have had long and fantastic careers off of one design.
Exactly. and their customers are absolutely happy with them. And that's one thing that I get in my head way too much still, is thinking that I need to keep creating new design. One is I feel like sometimes I'm being chased. Like if I do something, then it gets kind of borrowed, and then I have to be like, okay, I got to change, when I probably ought to just be like, nope, that's mine, and I'm not going to change because someone else did it too. That's being reactive, and that's not healthy either. But when I know, rationally, that I know makers that make the same knife, and their customers are absolutely ecstatic to get those knives. So I think that's something we have to kind of remember.
Most definitely. All right, man. So now that we've talked about all this negative shit, let's try and talk about some stuff that we can do to deal with it, to combat it, to help us relax and de-stress. And for me personally, one of the things that really de-stresses me is yard work. I always make time for my yard work because it's kind of my moment of zen. When I'm working in the yard, I'm not worried about fucking something up. It's just my damn grass, Yeah. As long as my rows look pretty straight, I'm just a happy camper.
I'm gonna say that's probably not my moment of zen. One, because my mower's pissing me off.
Yeah, I saw you were having mower problems.
I actually hit myself in the face with a wrench yesterday. That was it slipped off. I was wearing my safety glasses, my prescription ones, and I think I got pretty lucky there. But I absolutely smacked myself right in the eye with my wrench as it slipped off. So yeah, that's not my moment of zen right now. But I think anything sort of manual labor does help. When we get in these, what'd you call them? The dundrums or whatever?
The doldrums.
When we get into these where we feel like we can't work in the shop or do whatever, I think cleaning and rearranging is like my number one. I will get out there and just start going through, like, rearranging my books that I have, or really getting detailed on cleaning the shop, or looking at that machine that needed to be fixed or cleaned up. I think to me that kind of helps. And truthfully, a lot of designing. If I'm really not wanting to, I call it my work. That's not really work, is sitting there and designing knives. And I will do a lot of that. So I'll find that cleaning up or doing whatnot will put me in a better mood to get excited about it. And then a new design. And that's also, it goes back to, I feel like I always have to make new designs, but it's also a byproduct of me getting excited about something again. Because I have a hard time sticking with just doing the same thing over and over. The V4s and Vs, 5s and whatnot, mid-tech type of stuff. Man, that is a lot of the same stuff to me. And that gets to me too. But at the same time, there's a direct correlation of do this, do that, make this, and you have a finished knife, which I do love about that part.
Yeah.
But there is something about that that's kind of like very monotonous and very hard. But as far as like, I think at times I have to like absolutely step away from the shop, and it's okay. I think to me, it's better for you to step out of the shop, go do something absolutely different. And I have a hard time getting over like the guilt of being away from my shop when I know, okay, that's where I make my money. And you're just saying, oh, lazy ass, let's just get out of the shop and do it. But you'll spend those 3 days or whatever you do, jacking around the shop, probably messing something up and being pissed off and not getting anywhere mentally, versus being away from the shop and kind of revitalizing and being, whether it be like going and mowing or taking the kids or the family somewhere for a few days. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Just go away for a little bit, step away and step away into something that's absolutely non-knife related.
Yes.
Like we finally started doing vacations a couple years ago, and I look forward to it a lot because it has nothing to do with knife making, and it's an actual step away. Cause a lot of times people are like, oh, your show's your vacation, but they're not, they're fun. We are very lucky to have, like we said before, our friends and customers are mixed together, and our makers we're all kind of a collective group of people having a good time. But it is absolute work still. You still have to watch, you're still kind of on, so to speak. and it's tough to let that down. But when we've gone on vacation, I can let myself down. I can, hang out with the kids, which, always has its own amount of stress added to it. But it's different. You have to step away and you have to be okay with it. And you have to realize you shouldn't feel guilty about stepping away and taking a breather from your work. You do it when you work a real job, air quotes again, where you're working for somebody. You have the weekend where you're able to drop it. And that's healthy. That's a healthy way to do that. The problem with this kind of job that we have is you never really drop it. You're always like, yeah, if you have a moment, you're either responding to a customer or talking about knives with another maker or something. There's no real dropping of it. Imagine
as long as I can remember now, the first thing I think of when I get up in the morning is knives. And the last thing I have in my head before I go to sleep is knives.
It's knives, yeah. Which is great for the drive and great for the creativity, horrible for the mental health. It'd be like if you worked for FedEx and, when you had time off, you went to a FedEx forum and talked about FedEx packages and, you have to take a break from that. As much as you love it, you have to, it's the same with, what do they call it? Distance makes the heart go fond or.
A short retirement urges sweet return.
There you go. I knew you'd have a cool way of saying that. But yeah, I think that's very true. I think you have to be able to do that or you will just be frustrated or just burn out. Burnout is very real. The harder you burn for something, the faster you can burn out.
Oh, man.
Then we realize
flame that burns twice as bright burns only half as long. Always remember that.
You just got a book of sayings in front of you or some shit. I like that.
It's in my head, man.
All I got is stupid shit rattling around in my head.
Oh, I got plenty of that too.
Facts no one gives a shit about. Weird designs that I feel like I have to do that, So I think, I don't know. I don't know if we've helped people or not. I hope we've helped some.
If nothing else, hopefully we've give folks something to think about, and maybe somebody will hear this and get back at us and be like, hey, you know what you could do?
Yeah, I would love to hear people's suggestions on what they do to relax from the shop. Shooting sometimes is a great one.
Did we even really talk about burnout, or did we just mention it
We just skimmed it. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Burnout. Okay, let's define burnout. Just being tired of what the fuck you're doing. Does that
pretty much covers it?
Frustrated with it on just about every level you can think of?
Yeah, and I think we've skimmed on it earlier with talking about, because those are all versions of burnout. It's just, but man, when you hit that maximum version of it, holy shit, it hurts.
It do. It's something else. It makes you ask a lot of uncomfortable questions of yourself.
It does. It makes you wonder, is this something I need to be doing? Is this something that I'm good enough to do?
Yeah.
Because once again, it's tough to come out here and work for yourself and do that every single day. I found this past year that I got a little bit of burnout, this past winter, a little bit of burnout, a little bit of, I think I actually got lonely. And it took me a bit to figure that out, what the hell was going on. And when I realized it'd been 11 years or something of working for myself in a shop with headphones on, with nothing but, no actual real input, it will get to you.
Well, man, I mean, when you're a one-man show, isolationism can become a very real thing.
Mark talked about it being like he was like a slow burn, isolated chamber type of thing. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. And I talked to some guys. I talked to Nick Rossi about, because he works in a more creative type of environment setting. And he said it's fantastic when you have people to bounce your ideas off of. You have immediate type of feedback, where you're like, oh, look at this creative idea. And I think that feeds off each other. And I think people have to be very careful when they start doing this to start doing those things now, start doing those times off, those things like that. Go to events and, where there's people around, because I found that, one, I have this weird thing of I'm not really that much of a people person. And then the longer you start being by yourself, I think the weirder you get, probably. Social skills kind of start going a little bit down the hill, maybe.
Deteriorate some.
So, and it's not like I don't know how to act, but I just feel like going to some of our kids' like school functions, I'll be like, I am definitely kind of different than some people.
Yeah. Especially at the school functions, yes.
Yeah. But that's another version of burnout, when you're just you're burnout of yourself. There's only so much music out there. I hit a lot of podcasts, and I switch between music, podcast, audiobooks, but when you find yourself, when you find it harder to get some sort of input that keeps you going or something like that, then you realize that burnout is probably coming around pretty quick. Yeah. And you need to take steps to change that. And truthfully, that's where sometimes a show does step in and make it nice, when you're like, okay, because you are getting, gratification from what you're making. We all like someone saying, hey, good job, man. And no matter what job you do, if you hand in a report, at a real job, and someone says, hell of a report, or, whatever, I know that doesn't happen very often, but when it does something, you get that gratification, and we need that too, probably more than other people with our little artist minds, our little, little demon that we have in our back of our heads for doing what we do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we wouldn't do what we do the way we do it if we didn't crave validation on some kind of level. And I'll own that, man.
You have to. And that's another hard one to swallow, because we like to think, oh, we're doing this and blah, blah, blah. And truthfully, yes, if no one bought them, I'd probably still be making, but it doesn't mean I don't value validation. It does make it easier to step in and be like, okay, let's get on to the next one. Yeah. That made someone happy. I created something that made someone joyous and happy, and here we go, on to the next one. So I guess what do you do to, like, when you're feeling real burnout? How do you know it's coming, I guess, for one thing?
Man, it just kind of sneaks up. It's almost, just lurking there, and then all of a sudden, well, hey, it's been there a while. What the hell?
Yeah.
Is that when meant to combat it? Not the greatest help on this. The best thing I've come up with is search for some kind of novelty of experience. Something to really break up things.
What do you mean?
Man, do something way outside your wheelhouse in the shop. Do something way outside your wheelhouse just in your everyday normal life. Just something different. Something that's different and productive. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. I've done where I've been like, oh, I'm going to make a fixed blade now, because one, it's been helpful that fixed blades have kind of hit that resurgence and they'll actually sell, which is nice.
Yeah. But without people posting, gee, I wish that was a folder.
Yeah. Unfortunately, those were real days back in the day. But yeah, just being able to, like you said, do something absolutely different and out of your wheelhouse is fantastic. Making a fixed blade or building some sort of strange jig, which I wish I was better at building the jigs. The strange little gadgets that make knife making easier.
Yeah.
But things like that, then they're all versions of cleaning your shops, and organizing your work life. Those types of things can be very helpful. And you don't have to get that knife out the door, today. And that's okay. And that's where I kind of understand some of the guys that get caught up in selling a bunch of, spots or, having people pay deposits sort of thing.
Yeah.
I could see how that absolutely spirals out of control so fast. And that's kind of why we always recommend, please don't do it, because it's real easy to get in trouble.
Just don't. better than you have been brought down by it.
Yeah, but I can see how that being over your head, having just a wait list over my head is tough enough for me. And it's real hard to, not to get over the, paralysis by analysis on that, because it's like, oh, it's there. I got to get it. I couldn't imagine, having people's money and still trying to do that.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah, that's a kind of a tangent there, but I don't know. As far for me, for tangents, for burnout, I don't. I think that's one of my biggest problems is finding a good way to combat that, because I found my passion, I found my hobby, and I haven't found a hobby that competes with knife making.
Yeah, not even close.
So it's hard to find something that relaxes me like the knife making did. And that's where I think I've gotten myself into kind of backed into a corner, because I'm just like, that was my hobby. That was what gave me great joy and still does. But when that doesn't give me joy or gets me frustrated, I have a hard time finding something that doesn't. I will go shooting or something, or try to. I'll tell myself I need to go shooting, but I don't. Then I'm like, well, then I got to clean all the stuff, and but we have to find. I deplore everyone out there that's doing this to find something equal to it if you can, and try to stick with it and give you something to take your mind off of what you're doing. I tell you what, though, our mower messed up. Just kind of getting in there and doing mechanical stuff did help me. It does help. That sort of stuff, because it's mindless. If you put this bolt here and this bolt there, it becomes the complete piece. And that's all there is to it.
Yep.
So,
well, and you get the gratification of getting your damn mower running, and there's a lot to be said for that.
Man, it still sucks. I think I may have to get a new mower, but damn, there's hills are too big, man.
Push mow, man.
No, hell no.
Your body will be glad you did. It's great exercise. You've seen my yard. I don't need to push mow that shit. But I'm going to say, another thing, my personal suggestion, if you're dealing with any sort of anxiety, depression, things like that, one, please talk to somebody. There's no crime. There's no reason to feel bad about talking to someone about your issues. Everybody needs a sounding board. And it's hard to say it, but your family can also be sort of an echo chamber, like a Facebook group is. Mm-hmm. Same sort of thing. They may not be able to give back to you what you really need to hear. And there's nothing wrong with talking to someone, seeing someone, and truthfully, just like knife makers and other people, they're not all the same. You may not, the first person you go talk to may not be for you, and look around, you may have to work with a couple different people to kind of get over some issues. I imagine in a situation like that, there would have to be some kind of personality click for it to actually be beneficial.
Yeah. And if you have real, and I'm not talking about like real as in just, show stress. I'm talking about if you actually have, generalized anxiety or whatnot, I would highly recommend looking into a cognitive behavioral therapy type stuff. There's some few books. One of my would recommend is Badass Ways to End Anxiety and Stop Panic Attacks. It kind of covers a lot of the stuff that we deal with the panic attacks, and ways to kind of manage and work with some of that stuff, because it is, like I said, a rewiring of our mind. And you really just kind of got to work on rewiring it the other way to be like, hey, me standing in this room full of people is not the end of the world. This is not worth, fleeing from. And it's pretty good stuff. So look into it if you have issues with that. Or if you have problems, don't want to let anyone know, shoot me a message. I don't give a shit. I'll talk to you about it all you want.
He will. I've done it before. I've used the service.
And that's really just another way that I, if something's bothering me, I don't have to, work too hard. I can just sit there and chat.
Guilty of that one.
So do you think we helped anybody or did anything good today, or do you think we rambled and wasted podcast time?
Man, just talking about it will help somebody somewhere, I figure. I'm just hoping folks ain't like, that was the worst NPR episode I've ever heard. Jesus.
What a couple of pusses.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a little touchy-feely on this one, but hey, man, it's part of the knife making, and it's part of being able to do this for a long time. Longevity is the answer here. We got to remember we're not running a fucking sprint. This is a long-distance marathon, and we got to stop worrying about what other people are doing. We got to stop worrying about, the social media and shit like that, and just run your own race, man. I think stop worrying about it. And I found that I've tried to do that a lot more and drop a bunch of that shit and be like, it doesn't matter, good for someone else for doing well. Cause we're all friends and stuff. I love when you do well on an open bid or whatever. That is badass. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, man.
And we should be that way.
I like watching my friends crank out cool stuff,
Yeah.
Same.
But it's sometimes we're like, oh man, that was a really fucking cool piece. Wish I could do that. Sometimes I'll look at like Marsh's clips and be like, man, I wish I could fit a clip as easily as it looks like he does. But, it may take him a lot longer than I think it does. It may.
I was going to say, it ain't that easy. And he'd probably tell you that to your face.
Yeah. And he's honed that skill, So that's his to celebrate and not mine to worry about.
Yeah.
And that's how we should be looking at it, So hopefully this helps some people out. Do you have anything cool going on or crazy?
I'm going to go home and take my final in my computer course.
Now, I think that right there has helped you a lot with not the computer part, but the school. I think has helped you a ton.
Yeah, it's been a definite huge positive for me, which once this semester's over, we'll do a Minisode wrapping up the full semester and how everything went and how everything shook out and general thoughts on it. So I'm looking forward to that.
I like the back to school Minisode situations. I want to hear an update where you're at, and if you failed something, you just let us know, man. We ain't going to judge you.
Oh, no, man, I got a part the other day. I spent 3 days trying to get that son of a bitch. I restarted it 5 times. That was frustrating.
Yeah, I bet so, man.
And the last 2 times, it's just because I'm not super lathe familiar, and I grabbed the wrong hand wheel, and instead of going away from my cut, I run the cutter straight into it, and that's frustrating. Which I did end up, somebody mentioned that they had never heard anybody cuss so loud or so fast or so much in a given time frame. So, I guess I can feel good about that.
Somebody learned from you that day. They learned new words.
Yeah.
Probably.
If they've never heard the word fuck before, I taught it to them in spades.
But I think that's been helpful for you. And I think that's something I need to really look at for myself as far as like learning a new program and stuff like that. Taking classes. I think it would be great. So, and I think that's another good thing that people could look at out there. If you're struggling with something, the burnout stuff, maybe look at taking a class, night class, find the time for it. We all say we don't have time. And yes, we know it. I'm with you. I'm busy as shit. A couple of young kids, all the places we have to take them and stuff like that. And it's part of it. But if it will help you mentally, find that time and do it. You have to, or you'll end up burning out.
Yeah.
So, well, everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, thank you guys. And please feel free to sound off in the group or via message or however. Give us your feedback on this.
Yeah, always. Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at Birch Tree Blades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.